mind if I drink a bit more? Cheers.
I think you're the most successful artist I've ever seen break the fourth wall. Almost the entire time. It's really interesting. You know, I think you just reach out somehow. Is that?
Well, I feel like that. You know that thing in theatre where you watch a play and all the actors on stage are pretending that you're not there, and then you're pretending that you're not there, and everybody's kind of got this whole reverential idea about this thing they're watching, that it's so kind of other than them. I find it really fucking claustrophobic. I can't handle it. Like, and I get it. Like, obviously, that it works incredibly well for a lot of things. But like, if you've come out to sit in front of a piece of work, you want to feel like you're part of it. Like, the most important part of a story is who's listening to it. It's like, and I just feel weird. I'd feel really weird, like coming out on stage and like, you're all there, and like not saying hello. It's like, but it's not. I didn't sit down and think, oh right, I must break the fourth wall. Oh, it must be the artist that does that. I don't know. It just feels more natural to be engaging with you guys than to pretend that you're not in the room.
It was just sort of an aside, but no. I mean, one of the things that it doesn't even really matter, but it's like, do you think this is theater or rap or music, or what do you think?
I don't think of it really as any of those things. So it's brand new entrance, and it's kind of become what it's become through like a long process of it being, you know, I really worked it. It was so big and messy, and I didn't know what it was going to be. And then as it came together, it started to be what it wanted to be. But I don't know what I'd call it. And that's the thing, when you're trying to explain to somebody, I'm like, oh, I've got this show, and they're like, oh, what is it? And then like, you're like, oh, anything I say is going to make it sound really awful. I mean, it's like this kind of rap, theatre, mythology, soap opera, with classical instruments. But I don't know, it works, I hope.
Yes, it does.
Do you want to talk about your process a little bit?
What, for this? For Brain Rage? What, in what sense?
Well, when we were talking last night, you said you really do like to talk about the process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about it?
Sure. I don't know, I suppose what's interesting to say is that when a piece of work is finished and you look at it and you engage with a piece of work, it's kind of hard to remember that it began as just a kind of like a really strange idea. You know, anything that's finished, it can be almost intimidating for people who are, for me as an artist, but for anybody. If you look at a piece of work and it's like, oh wow, that's so finished, I could never do anything. I always think that, you know, when you're reading, you're like, oh, that's so fucking perfect and finished. But actually, like, this is not really about my process, I'm just saying like a kind of whimsical, amusing. But what I'm trying to say is I feel like it shouldn't be intimidating, it should be like invigorating to look at a piece of work, because it began when I first started writing Brand New Ancients. I remember the first time that I performed it was in this scratch thing. There was like 30 people in this room, and I had written it in a notebook. And it was my notebook, like I had, for some reason I'd written on one page and I had to turn it around and write upside down on the back, and because I was running out of paper, and so I was like sectioning off blank bits and like writing in there, and I had to read it out, and it was like, oh, so I kept losing it, and like it was a really furious reading of this like insane writer being like, no, there's a bit like dropping pages out, and like, but then from there, I don't know, I realised, there was a moment where I realised that all this massive, huge idea was zoning in to a point. And I don't know if that's interesting or not.
So yeah, it's a lot, right? It's poetry, it's writing, it's all that. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about how it all comes together. Like, when you're writing, are you writing to speak it? Because partly one of the things I love is you'll be talking or rapping or something, and then suddenly it'll just go into like the slightest of melody or something, and it's just the way your voice will just lilt. It's just so beautiful. It just becomes lyrical, and then it goes into something else. So I just wondered how if and when you're writing, are you hearing it while you're writing it, and are you singing it while you're,
It's like
the music and the language, like, do they go together for you? How do they relate?
Yeah, I think especially poetry it lives when it's spoken. Language is only alive when it's spoken, I think. And although the old poets, like the old guys, there's recordings of like W.B. Yeats and people like this. They sing their work out. It's just a natural thing. Like when you're telling a rhyme, you begin to chant or you get into this rhythm, and it's not something that you intend to do, but it means that you're in the right place, I think. Because when you start doing it, obviously I can hear myself. I'm like, oh right, apparently I'm singing. But it means that you're feeling it in the right way, I think. And then when I'm writing, yeah, I often speak it out. I can hear it. It happens here, and then it has to go down on the page. But as I try and write different things, like write for other people to speak, or write for the page, and like, I know that I'm not going to read it out. You still want the language to kind of be bursting with that kind of melody or lyricalness, lyricism, but that it should be heard like that, I think. When you're reading a poem and you read it with your eyes, and it doesn't make sense. The rhyme doesn't make sense, and you say it, and you're like, it becomes this magical thing. As soon as you say it out, it's like, oh, this beautiful thing, and that's how, especially poetic language, should be engaged with. I think it should just be heard. And like the old guys, they used to, Homer would speak his legends, sing it out,
I have a feeling you were there. It's also nice that you have a lot of gestures too that go along with it. And then how did you get the theatrical elements in? The lighting is exquisite. If Matt's still in here, I mean, the lighting is really beautiful.
That was it was designed by India Banks, Christina Hardinge, and Matt O'Leary, who's just gone to get on his plane home. But it's so important, I suppose, for the story that, because when I first started reading it out, people were really confused. One of the things in these scratches, people were like, oh, you introduced all these characters, I don't know who they are. So the lighting, the sound, everything is just trying to make it just a safe space for the audience to not have to worry that they're missing something. So, do you know what I mean? So every time that light changes, you know where you are, and it's so helpful for me as well. Like when I'm on stage and or sometimes I'm like, what's about to happen? Where? And then it's like, oh right, it's that light. So it's yeah, it's beautiful. And I suppose it's strange because I don't know much about theatre. I don't come from a background where I was desperate to be acting or directing or writing theatre or anything like that. So for me, it's been quite an amazing experience to learn what it means to be in a theatre in front of an audience. Like having a story happen. So I've become quite a fan.
It's funny because when I saw it the first time, there were moments of it that reminded me a little bit of the play Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why, in a way, just that I was thinking about that. I don't know if any of you saw Jerusalem with Mark Rylance, and it turns out that the director is the same director who helped you with this, right?
Oh yeah, for real. Ian Rickson is, he's amazing. He's an amazing guy. And he came to see the Brand New Ancients when it was in a really early stage at Battersea Arts Centre, and he's like a big deal, And he
very big.
He ran the Royal Court for 12 years. He's the guy that put on Sarah Kane's work, and he's a really serious man. And he just came and watched the play, and he's. I felt so. Every time I'm in his company, I feel like I must be as inspirational as possible to make him feel like it's worth his time. I try and really profound for him. I am the artist you think I am. he's been really helpful. What he does is, because it's such a big, lonely, scary thing to tell, this big story, and I have been a bit crossed under the weight of it. And Ian will just ask me a question, or put a colour in my mind, or just say something about, he'll just ask a question about a moment, and then I'll go out on stage with thinking about that question, and I'll try and solve it for him as I'm kind of telling the story. And it's been an amazing experience to work with a director. He doesn't direct my movement, he doesn't direct anything really physical. He helps my brain deal with what it has to do. And so I feel really blessed to be working with him. He's totally amazing.
I think what we should do is open
Sure.
it up and let people talk to you and ask you questions. Does anyone want to talk to Kate?
Could you talk a little bit about your artistic decisions moving from the different microphones and the different stage positions?
Yeah, sure. So that microphone there is a 414, and it's a beautiful microphone. And I wanted to do the whole show on that mic, but it's really boring. But you'll get, because it's such a sensitive microphone, you'll get bleed from the instruments. So the SM58 is this one, and it's it's much better at picking up your voice and kicking back what it doesn't want to hear. Anyway, it turned out to be a really nice thing to have to change, because it gives. So this becomes the kind of narrative mic, obviously, and there's something beautiful about the tones it gets out of your voice, and it allows me to kind of centre myself. Because if I've got a mic in my hand, I'll be all over the place, and that's distracting. You just want to hear a story. I don't want to just stand there and tell a story. Then when it's the chorusy bits, then I pick this mic up, and then I feel like I'm rapping, and it's nice, and I feel like I'm, coming out and like. And then that bit when we kind of go off mic. Because there were two worlds now that we were using, we thought that bit didn't belong in either, and it would be nice to for you just to hear that. It's like it's just a change, isn't it? It's nice. And I come from a musical background. Like I came into all this through music, and so for me, I'd be really happy if everybody shut their eyes and just listened to it. It's like so. That's what we were. I don't know. Hopefully that was an effective decision. Cool.
You said you came from a musical background, so you wrote all the music too, right?
No, sorry.
Oh.
When I say music, I came into poetry and stuff through music, but the music was composed by a lady called Nell Catchpole, who's fantastic, and she kind of curated the composition with the musicians in the room.
How did that work with the voice?
It was unlike any other collaboration I've been involved in. It was really amazing. So we got everybody together in this room, and I had written the text already, and they kind of scored it like a film. So these moments that these themes started coming up, and we were just playing around, kind of improvising, and then something would stick. We'd be like, okay, that's Tommy's music. Okay, great. And then it was a really kind of subtle process of everything. Sometimes when you collaborate, as you probably all know, I'm sure you're all creative, I can feel it. When you collaborate, there's this kind of danger zone when there's any kind of, I think, competition between the two artists that are involved, and obviously everyone's got that in them, but like, it felt so supportive. It was like, it wasn't about anything other than letting the story be told. So the music tells as much of the story, I think, as the words. Like those moments when they take over and they play. It's like, that's more lyrical than the lyric. But what was so nice is that it was like a guided. It's like it's like this kind of subtle, guided, exciting, fast moment of like composing all together, and it being about the kind of the good of the story.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why were those the specific stories you wanted to tell? Like those sort of nuggets of life?
She asked why. Can I change it?
Yeah.
Kind of, how did you choose those particular stories as the nuggets of life that you chose?
Well, I began writing it, and all these stories started coming out. The characters are I knew the character. I started to get to know the characters as I was writing it, and it just happened that way. I can't really explain it. Like when a piece of work is finished, it's easy to think that it began its life knowing exactly where it was going. But the truth, actually, and people will fucking shoot me down for saying it, but it's as much about instinct as it is about decision making or discipline or like I begin writing and I don't know, for this anyway, I didn't. Other stuff I've done, I begin and I know exactly what's going to happen. I've just got to sit down and write it. But this, it was just like, wow, what's happening? Who are these people? Like I wrote that scene in the pub, that. And I was like, what the fuck? I wrote that before I even knew who Clive was or who Spider was. And then it was like, okay, they did this, but who are they? And then it's like, it's all comes from life. They're all real people. I have love in my heart for all of those characters. But those little moments, like with the fire and the affair and, the things, the moments that contribute to a person being who they become. I don't know. It's just like, it just felt like that's what they wanted me to be talking about.
Yeah.
I think some of that came, I know from my viewpoint, some of the things about those characters were unexpected. So I really love that about, I love that about the piece, because you might think that, oh, Tommy's gonna realize that he's gonna come and rescue her because she's in trouble, but that's not what happens
that's
at
interesting,
all.
because like, when I first wrote it, right, that's what happened, that's the scene I wrote, and then I was like, how can I, a woman who cares about, strong female characters, suddenly, I was like, what the fuck is this, like, but it was so strange, because it's so much a part of how you think about just a story, it's just so in you. And so I had to be like, hold on a minute, like, Gloria's fucking cool, like. And so then Gloria it made much more sense, And then also with some of them, like the bad guys, it's like, or when I first started writing Tommy, it was like, I would write the kind of easy thing, and I'd read it and I'd be like, oh, I've just written this kind of easy, one-dimensional, and then you kind of force yourself back in and you go like, no, wait a minute, like, make them real, like, give them all that kind of unexpected stuff that you're talking about. Because it's so in you to write fucking one-dimensional characters, because that's what story's about. You have a good guy and a bad guy, and the girl gets in trouble and then the boy comes and saves her. That's just what, like, it's just in you somewhere, I don't know why. So it's like, it became like a bit of a conscious kind of mission to like fall in love with the bad guys and to give Gloria her moment. I don't know.
I loved it also with Clive, when he sets the fire, that's horrifying, right? And then he, holds the door. But then when you have him come back in with the bucket, it's, again, completely unexpected, at least for me.
Did it occur to you to have, I kept waiting for Clive or Thomas to kill each other. That's what I was dreading through the whole piece. The brothers would, be each other's undoing. Did that occur to you at all?
Yeah. But the mythological context, and often, the myth begins with so the Odyssey begins with the son without the father, and the father is not there, and the son has to deal with it, and his house is ransacked by all this, bad things are happening at home, and like he's just on his own. And that is like all of the myths. You can see this kind of relationship between the father and the son. And I think it's kind of interesting, but what does fatherhood mean now? Like when so many fathers that I know anywhere have real trouble. There's like so many interesting things about what does that mythological context mean now, or mean in the context of an affair and two brothers growing up without knowing anything about each other. And I don't know. I wanted it to be there, but I didn't. I decided not to go down that route because I thought it was kind of there enough already. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think Kevin is interesting because he doesn't seem to be so developed, but then he's all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Because
he does know, right? Like he doesn't realize it's not his son, and he stays there anyway. So it makes all the difference.
I feel like I wish I'd been able to go back and give them all more time, but it's already an hour and 10 minutes.
Hi. So how much of a Williams life fan would you say you are? because some of the parts in the songs, when you say the gods are in us,
Yeah.
and I say this as the highest form of compliment I can say, they do sound to me a lot like the marriage between heaven and hell. Some parts of it, and well.
I love him.
Oh,
I
okay.
love him so much.
You're my favorite person in the world.
Yeah, I think William Blake is. He was just said, if anyone couldn't hear, he was saying, do you like William Blake? Because it sounds like you do. Yeah, I think he's great. He saw Angels in Peckham Rye, which is near where I live. That's like such a crap claim to fame, isn't it? Anyway. So,
could you share something about your upbringing and the world that you grew up in, and were these characters based on experiences that you had or people that you knew?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in southeast London, and I feel really attached to my area, my home, the people that I've grown up around. And I saw a lot in my developing years that has informed the person that I've become, as with anybody else. But then, Branding Matrix is not a way of me writing about things that have happened in they're characters, you know, it's fiction, it's poetry, but it all comes from real people, like Spider and Clive, like, you know, like I went to school with them, you know, of course we all did, and Tommy, like, I know them, but they're not real, but they begin in a felt experience, you know, something that has its roots in reality.
Have your parents seen the show?
Yeah, loads of times.
They love it?
Yeah, they love it. It's always nice when they're in the audience as well, but the first time they saw it, and I saw that my mum was in the audience, I got really nervous and started swearing on us, which is like the worst thing you can do in front of your mum. Yeah, just like swearing and swearing because I was so nervous. And in the story, poor mother.
I just wanted to ask you, was your family religious?
No. On my dad's side, they're Jewish. On my mum's side, they're, I suppose Christian, but they're not. Neither of them follow it. Why are you laughing? I don't know. I feel like the lack of religion. I mean, this may be a little bit heavy, but why not? We'll just go there anyway. But I'm not religious, but I feel very connected to a kind of undercurrent of another world, a spiritual, not spiritual, but a world of faith. I have a lot of faith in things and in life, and I feel like that disconnect in England anyway I think it's difficult for people to have nothing to believe in, and I don't think people should believe in anything in particular, but I think it's hard how disconnected we are from anything other than the surface of this, the 9 to 5, fucking, you know, cold world that means nothing. We're human beings, we need myth, we need ritual, we need, like, you know, art and music, and we need to feel and love. And suddenly we're just on a train at 8 in the morning and just packed into people's armpits, and we're going home, then we're going to the pub, and there's nothing, and it's all about money, and it breaks my heart. So I feel like that actually theatre is a really, really important gathering of people. We could just gather to feel together, because that doesn't happen outside churches, and I think churches are scary places. I think that's what I've discovered about theatre on this whole kind of journey into them, that it's like quite an amazing thing. People just sit next to each other, and each person's experience affects the collective experience. And then you walk out into the night, and you take it with you, out into the world, and I don't know, I think it's quite a magical thing.
I feel that way too. Well, we started in a church, which was really funny.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And how did it feel watching?
Well, one of the things that was interesting was we didn't do as much theater. We did a lot of music, but we would sort of theatricalize the music. Yeah. So, you know, there'd always be great lighting, or we'd have interesting, you know, artists come together to make music. But there would always be this kind of theatrical element. So it could be visual elements, or just. But the thing that and we were in the sanctuary of the church also, so we always had to be aware that, you know, we had to be out of there for Sunday morning. Yeah. And I'm Jewish, so it was really weird for me. Yeah. And above the altar was this, you know, Jesus ascending. Yeah. So it had a mythical feeling. So if we would do something, I remember we did a film series called the Not 1984 film series, and so there was these films about the hydrogen bomb going off, and I remember just looking at it, and there was like Jesus' arms outstretched in gorgeous stained glass, and then, you know, these atomic bombs going off. I was just looking at that, you know, and there was something like, this could be a safe place to look at everything. And that was what I got out of being in there, out of presenting theater and music and work in the church. I felt like it all comes down to human error, you know, because here we can look at everything. But the thing I liked the most was the lit candle. There was this little thing in the corner that always had to be lit, which said it was a consecrated church, as opposed to a deconsecrated church. So we were always reminded that we were in a sacred space. And I think of theater that way too. So it was a very good match for a long time. Yeah, because we didn't do things of religious content, but it's just something from another world that felt good. And when we moved into a warehouse, I felt like the same thing was there. Which is kind of interesting. And this is our second warehouse, so.
Do you listen to a lot of spoken word poetry?
I'll be completely honest with you. I don't really. Like I do it. You know, I'm a spoken word artist, but I don't really know what that even means. Do you know what I mean? I had these lyrics and I'd written them to music, and I turned up at these spoken word events and I told them, and they became poems. And then now I'm a poet and I'm writing poems, and it's all very strange. But I listen to people in London like that I hang out with. I go and see them, and they're fantastic. I think it's a really incredible way of encountering writing. But I don't really listen to. Like, I see it, but I don't have like CDs. I don't like put it on. But I have got a recording of Bukowski that I listen to all the fucking time, actually. And it's him reading. It's such an amazing recording, and he's just like so grouchy, and like in between all the poems, he's like just kind of talking to the engineer, and you guys should actually get it. You should get it. It's so good. It's just that he reads like 30 poems. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, sorry, that's not what you asked.
Can you talk about the end and your choice to end with Brian?
Yeah. The end and the she said, can you talk about the end and the choice to end with Brian? Basically, Brian, they're all meant to have a redemptive moment, right? And it was really hard to think, well, you know, how can Brian, what can his redemption be? He's a horrible man, isn't he? Like, everything that he does is just horrible. And then suddenly I started seeing this new life for Brian. I don't know. I wanted it to end with him dying, because that's the epic arc of the thing, you know, from a birth to a death. And I think it's kind of interesting because it like jolts you out of it. It's a weird ending, right? It's not quite satisfying in some ways, but I think it's satisfying in other ways. And it was a challenge to like find, you know, Brian is run off of he's gone and married a Thai bride, which I think is detestable, but then actually like, or is it? And that's the whole point of the thing. It's just an exercise in empathy. It's like there's nothing that anyone can do that you should be at, like you should follow your first judgment on. And that's how I felt about Brian. Really, I had to be like, come on, then like think again about Brian. And I don't know. I thought it was like a nice place to end it. I don't know. Is that right?
You mentioned a redemptive moment for everybody, but am I missing something Spider and Clive?
Well, I thought their redemption comes in their relationship with each other. So that they have this moment of finding in each other this brotherhood, this relationship, and they have a bond. And I feel like that gives that, between them, what they have for each other makes them understandable, and it makes them makes them kind of beautiful, because just because they hang out together and they care about each other, and I don't know, I feel like that visiting them there. So just in that moment after the spider tries to shut up the girl and she laughs at him, and he goes back over to Clive, and then we have this kind of moment where we talk about what they became and how they, how their life, what they found of each other. And I feel like that a redemptive moment, all it has to be is, are they capable of love? And they are. They love each other, even though they have never really been loved properly themselves. Okay.
Just doesn't mean they're going to have a happy ending.
Well, no, but yeah, I think that's redemption, isn't it? Just the capability.
Yeah.
So just love.
Okay. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much.